Aviation 13.
Welcome to another Volaire video. I'm Jack Penning. These are, of course, brought to you by Alex Lynch at Gen XI Productions. We're back this week with another Zoomin with Volaire, where we interview over Zoom and we talk about issues facing the industry. Will Birchelman, our Director of Air Service Development, is going to join us again, and we're going to be talking about the future of the United Airlines network. An interesting airline to really analyze is United and where they're going, because after the merger with Continental, they did end up with a few hubs that are right next to each other. Of course, thinking of Dulles and Newark, they're very close in proximity. They've served different traffic flows, but as demand is reduced, you have to wonder about the need for both. In California, there's long been the desire to build up San Francisco, and LA has become much less important to connecting people to Asia for United over time. With LA being so competitive, you have to wonder about that one. In the mid-continent, Denver isn't going anywhere. Chicago is home. That's not going anywhere.
Right.
But with oil where it is, you got to wonder, is Houston's role de-emphasized? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't necessarily think that Houston will be de-emphasized per se. I think that it will probably be a smaller hub, at least for the short term. But the reality is that Houston is located in what was, going to COVID-19, one of the fastest growing state of the nation population-wise. Houston is an incredibly large MSA. But what a lot of people in the industry, or some people in the industry, may not realize is that even though Houston as a city is quite a big market, it actually is a much smaller O&D market than a lot of other cities in the country. In fact, Houston only generated about 19,000 PDU on any given day going into this crisis. Now, just to put that in perspective, Houston's at 19,000, whereas Chicago's at 24, Newark's at 31,000. So Houston is by far one of the smaller networks in the United Hub. In fact, it's only slightly larger than Denver. So I think that United will continue to use Houston to flow people north-south, throughout the central part of the country. But I think its role as an east-west connecting hub will probably diminish somewhat, because a lot of those flows can be sent officially over Chicago and Denver to some extent if you're going out to the Intermountain West and West Coast.
So yeah, and I think Denver is clear. That's where United is making probably its strongest margins on connections. LAX is really interesting because it's a fight. It has been, you've got Southwest is big there, Delta, American, United, Alaska trying to establish a north-south foothold there to Mexico and Central America. How is that going to shake out?
Well, United had already over the years shrunk its network in Los Angeles, so I think that's probably only going to continue.
The last real point of intrigue in the United network is what happens in the Northeast, because you got Newark where you're dominant, you have Dulles where you're dominant, but they serve the same kind of traffic, albeit Dulles does it a lot more efficiently from an air traffic standpoint. But New York is the biggest O&D market in the country. So This is a real interesting one to think about.
Yeah, and I'm gonna offer a contrarian view here. I think perhaps the current wisdom would suggest that Newark would be the clear winner between the two hubs, if we assume that cuts have to be made in one hub to survive and one doesn't. I don't think that will be the case. I think both will continue to function United's network. But we already knew before this crisis started that United had slowly started to shift Newark away from being a true connecting hub and putting more emphasis on the local New York market for the reasons you stated. And that's a big part of why United was slowly beginning to build the Dulles hub, albeit constrained due to facilities. But ultimately the strategy was to turn Dulles into a north-south connecting complex. I think that as we get past COVID-19, that strategy will continue. Now, we may see United in the short term pull down its Dulles footprint. And there'll be people who will say, well, with Americans so strong in DCA, Southwest having a large presence in Baltimore, maybe it's not a market worth fighting for. But I really disagree with that. I think that for United, it really needs Dulles to compete for those north-south traffic when you have America down in Charlotte and Delta down in Atlanta. So I think the strategy has been right all along. It just may be delayed a bit.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. We hear a lot of doom and gloom for hubs like Dulles, but it definitely has a role in the network.
Yeah, I think Dulles is going to have a key role in serving some of these smaller markets that are regional in nature, that really aren't, really won't be served as efficiently from Chicago or even Newark for that matter. I think we have to step back and realize that holistically, hubs in general, I think, are going to have a tendency to become more regionalized in the markets that they serve. Now, you're still going to have the super hubs like Chicago and Dallas and Atlanta that are going to serve O&Ds all across the network. But I think what we may call the secondary hubs, while they will serve all the top O&D markets from that particular station, their emphasis will be more regional in general. And in the past, if you go back to the 80s, that's really how hubs function. Now, granted, there were more of them, but they functioned mostly that way because of the type of aircraft that were available to fly to long, thin markets, or thin markets in general, I mean. So, it was really the equipment that drove, how the hubs function. Today, I think it's going to be more economics and frankly, available aircraft, because we all know that the airlines are shrinking and there just won't be as many planes, in the next 4 to 5 years.
Again, thanks so much to Will for joining us for Zoomin with Volaire. We're not done yet. We've got at least a couple more episodes for you. Look for our next episode in a couple days' time, talking about the future for low-cost carriers. Will and I are going to talk about why we think Allegiant in particular is positioned really well to come out of this period of reduced demand in a very good position. Again, we'll have that in a couple days' time. We do thank you so much for watching, and stay safe.